I was a prison guard for 15 years. Maximum security. When I took the job, I thought I was ready for the violence. I figured I'd see riots, fights, things you wouldn't believe. But the most horrible thing I ever witnessed wasn't the noise of a riot. It was the deafening silence that came after. That's where the real nightmares live. And that's the story I'm going to tell you. You don't grow up wanting to be a corrections officer. Kids play cops and robbers, not convicts and guards. I was no different. I wanted to be a cop. I saw it as a noble thing to do, a way to make a real difference, to stand on the right side of things. I came from a small town where right and wrong felt simple. I was 24, full of that dumb confidence you only have when you're young. I'd done a couple years of college and worked construction, but I was looking for a career. Something with a pension. Something with a purpose. The police department had a hiring freeze, but the State Department of Corrections was hiring. They pitched it as a foot in the door to law enforcement. A training ground. I thought, all right, I can do this. How hard could it be? You wear a uniform, you enforce the rules, and you keep the bad guys locked away. In my head, it was all black and white. There were good guys, us, and there were bad guys, them. I believed in the system. I believed prison wasn't just for punishment, but for rehabilitation. That maybe you could take a broken person and put some of the pieces back together. I remember my academy instructor, a grizzled old captain with a face like a roadmap of every bad day he'd ever had. He told us, "This job will change you. You'll see the worst of humanity, and if you're not careful, it'll leach the good right out of you." We all nodded, but we didn't really hear him. We were young. We were tough. We thought we were invincible. We learned how to use pepper spray and restraints, how to do a strip search, how to write a report. They teach you everything except how to keep from losing your soul. They can't teach you that. That first set of blues felt like a suit of armor. The weight of the radio on my hip, the clink of the keys. It all felt important. I was proud. I was joining a brotherhood, holding back the chaos. I was ready for the violence, for the danger. I wasn't prepared for the place itself. The smell. The sound. The sheer, oppressive weight of thousands of broken lives crammed into a concrete box. I was an idealist walking into a place that eats idealists for breakfast. I thought I was going to be a guardian. I didn't realize I was just signing up to be a keeper in a human zoo, and that sooner or later, I'd start to feel like just another animal in the cage. I had no idea the job isn't about what you do to them. It's about what it does to you. The first time those massive steel doors rolled shut behind me, the sound went through my whole body. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling. A final thump that cut the outside world off from the inside. In there, the air is different. It's thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, industrial cleaner, stale food, and something else. Something metallic and anxious that I'd later learn was the smell of fear and despair. They put me in C Block, a maximum security unit. Almost half the officers in facilities like these work in max security. It was a long, two-tiered cavern of concrete and steel, painted a pale, sick-looking green that was peeling everywhere. The noise hit me first. A constant, low roar made of 100 different sounds. Men shouting from cell to cell, the tinny blare of cheap radios, the clang of steel on steel, and the rhythmic, unnerving thump of someone just banging. Banging on their door, on the wall, for hours. My field training officer, a guy named Miller, was a walking cliché. Overweight, cynical, with a mustache that had probably been there since the 80s. He didn't say much. Just handed me a set of keys and said, "Rule 1, never trust an inmate. Rule 2, don't you ever forget Rule 1. He walked me down the tier. The cells were tiny, maybe 6 by 9. A toilet, a sink, a slab of concrete for a bed. And in every one, a pair of eyes watching you. Some curious, some dead. Some filled with a kind of predatory hate that felt like it could burn a hole right through you. They always test the new guy. They look for weakness. "Hey, new boot," a voice shouted. "You look scared. Don't worry, we'll take good care of you." Laughter echoed down the block. I kept my face straight, my eyes forward. Just like they taught us. Don't engage. Don't show a thing. Miller just grunted. "They're just inmates. They're on our time." We did the first count. 4 times a shift, you walk and you count bodies. Make sure everyone's there. It's mundane, but it's critical. On that first count, I saw it. Tucked in the corner of a cell, a man was sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth, humming. He had smeared something dark and brownish red all over the walls. I thought it was mud. Then the smell hit me. Coppery and foul. He'd used his own feces as finger paint, drawing these insane patterns all over his world. His eyes were just vacant. He wasn't there. Miller didn't even break stride. Just made a note on his clipboard. "You get used to it," he said, not even looking at me. The The crazies, the shit painters. Part of the scenery. But I knew I wouldn't. How could you? This wasn't a man breaking a rule. This was a man whose spirit was so shattered that the basic rules of being human didn't apply anymore. I saw that, and a piece of my idealism turned to dust. This wasn't about rehabilitation. This was about warehousing human misery. Later we did mail call. Another routine task, but it's a lifeline for them. A reminder that another world exists. A young kid, maybe 20, was waiting on a letter from his mom. He asked about it every day. Miller just shrugged and kept moving. The kid's face just fell, and in that moment he wasn't a convict. He was just a lost boy a long way from home. The day was just a blur of those moments. Mind-numbing routine, punctuated by flashes of raw human suffering. Most of the job is 95% boredom. The counts, the searches, the paperwork. But you're always waiting for the other 5%. The 5% is the violence, the chaos, the moment it all goes sideways. And because you never know when it's coming, you live in a constant state of low-grade fight or flight. It's a switch that flips on the second you walk through that gate, and as I learned later, it's a switch you can never really turn off. My first day ended 12 hours after it began. As I walked out, I got in my car and just sat there for 10 minutes, my hands shaking. The prison had already started to claim a piece of me. You can't work in a prison long without seeing a fight. They happen for any reason or no reason. A debt, a stolen bag of chips, a disrespectful look. Sometimes, it's just the pressure building up until something snaps. I'd been on the job about 6 months. I was starting to get comfortable, thinking I had a handle on things. That's always when it happens. It was chow time in the day room. 150 inmates crammed into a space built for half that. The noise was a deafening roar. My partner and I were by the door, trying to watch everyone at once. An impossible task. It started over nothing. A shove. An argument over a piece of cornbread. But in there, nothing stays nothing for long. An inmate, a lifer named Santos, stood up and drove his plastic spork into the neck of another inmate from a rival gang. It was fast, vicious, and brutal. The second guy stumbled back, a hand flying to his neck, his eyes wide with surprise. Then the blood started. Not a trickle. A gush, pulsing out between his fingers, splashing on the floor. For a split second, the whole room froze. Then all hell broke loose. It was a flash mob of pure violence. Guys from both sides were on their feet, grabbing trays, chairs, whatever they could. The air filled with shouts, screams, and a sound I will never forget, the wet thud of fists hitting flesh and bone. My radio was already in my hand. Signal 13, C-Block Day Room. Signal 13. The code for an officer needing help. My partner and I drew our pepper spray. We deployed it, but it barely slowed them down. They fought right through it, coughing and gagging but still swinging. An inmate charged me, his face a mask of rage. I didn't even have time to think. It was pure instinct. I met him with my shoulder, driving him back. He stumbled, and another inmate was on him, kicking him in the ribs as he lay on the ground. It felt like forever, but it was probably 90 seconds before the cavalry arrived. A dozen officers in riot gear. That was enough to break the spell. Some backed off, hands up. Others had to be wrestled to the ground. The floor was slick with blood and pepper spray. The guy who was stabbed was on the ground in a pool of dark blood. The medics were working on him, but I could tell from the color of his skin it was too late. He was gone. The aftermath is what really stuck with me. We spent the next 4 hours on lockdown. I had to write the report, my hands still shaking. My uniform was spattered with someone else's blood. I remember trying to scrub it off in the bathroom sink, watching the pink water swirl down the drain. I looked at my reflection. What I saw wasn't just a scared kid. I saw something else hardening in my expression. I was thinking, fuck him. He had it coming. That thought scared me more than the fight itself. You start to see them not as people but as problems to be managed, threats to be neutralized. It's a survival mechanism. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I saw it again. The sport. The look of surprise. The blood. I didn't know the term then, but it was trauma. And it was the first of many nights I'd lose to the ghosts of that place. After a year or two you think you get it. You learn the official rules. But those rules are just a thin layer over the real prison, the one that runs on a totally different set of laws. This inside world has its own politics, its own economy, and its own brutal code of justice. And if you want to survive as a guard, you have to understand it. The real power inside isn't held by the warden, it's held by the gangs. They control everything. Our job wasn't to crush them, that's impossible. Our job was to manage them. To keep a fragile, simmering peace. It's a constant balancing act. I learned this the hard way during a block-wide shakedown. We had intel that a new batch of shanks, homemade knives, had been passed around. So, at 3 a.m. we tossed the entire block. In one cell I found a shank, a masterpiece of prison engineering. A toothbrush handle sharpened to a razor point on the concrete floor. It could puncture a lung. I confiscated it, cuffed the inmate, and sent him to the SHU, the hole. I thought I'd done my job. What I'd actually done was stumble into a political minefield. The next day, the shot caller for that gang, an older inmate named Rios, flagged me down in the yard. Rios wasn't big or scary. He was quiet, almost like a professor. But when he spoke, people listened. He had more power in that yard than the governor. "Officer," he said calmly, "we need to talk." My training said to shut it down. Don't negotiate. But my gut told me to listen. "What's on your mind, Rios?" I asked. "The kid you rolled up yesterday," he said. "The weapon wasn't his. He was holding it for someone from another car." Car was their word for gang. "He says no, he gets hurt. He says yes, you catch him and he goes to the hole." He was in a bad spot. He was telling me that by punishing a foot soldier, I had disrupted a delicate balance. A debt was created. And in their world, debts always get paid, usually in blood. "He broke the rules, Rios," I said. "I find a weapon, the weapon goes, and the man holding it goes to the hole. That's the job." Rios nodded slowly. He wasn't arguing. He was educating me. "I understand. But now there's an imbalance. The other car feels cheated. They'll want to retaliate. It's going to make this block hot. Fights. Stabbings. More paperwork for you. More headaches for everyone." He was laying it all out. Not a threat. A weather report. A storm was coming, and I was the one who'd seeded the clouds. "What do you want from me, Rios?" "Nothing," he said. "You did your job. The kid will do his time. But maybe the actual owner of that weapon finds himself in some trouble. Maybe he gets in a fight he can't win. His own people will handle it. The debt will be paid. The balance restored. And the block stays quiet." He was asking me to look the other way. Let a controlled fire burn to prevent a wildfire. This is the impossible position the job puts you in. Follow the rules and watch your block explode, or bend them and make a deal with a monster like Rios to keep order. I hated it. It felt dirty. But I'd already seen a man die over cornbread. I just looked at Rios and gave a tiny, almost invisible nod. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked away. 2 days later, an inmate slipped in the shower. Broken jaw, 2 fractured ribs. He never said who did it. The block stayed quiet. The storm never came. That was the day I truly understood. It's a world of compromised morals, where you have to choose the lesser of 2 evils just to get through the day. And every time you make one of those compromises, you lose another piece of that idealistic kid who first walked through the gates. The hypervigilance never leaves you. It's a low hum of anxiety that becomes the soundtrack of your life. You sit with your back to the wall in restaurants. You watch people's hands. You're always living in fight or flight, and your body pays the price. You know you could be seriously injured or killed at any moment. You have to push that thought down just to walk in the door. Then one day it's not a thought anymore. I was working the SHU, the whole prison within a prison. Inmates are in their cells 23 hours a day. It's a place of profound isolation and concentrated rage. My job was to escort an inmate, Pruitt, from his cell to the shower. A routine movement. The protocol is strict. 2 officers. You cuff them through the food slot before the door ever opens. "Pruitt, cuff up," I said. He came to the door, put his hands through. I put the cuffs on, checked them, and gave the signal to my partner, a rookie, to pop the door. I opened it. "Step out, face the wall," I ordered. He took 1 step out. And then he exploded. He had somehow slid his cuffed hands from behind his back to in front of him. He was a slider, able to dislocate his thumb to get the cuffs under his feet. He lunged past me toward the rookie, spun, and mule kicked backwards. His boot caught me square in the face. The world went white. It sounded like a tree branch snapping. The back of my skull hit the concrete wall with a sickening thud. I was on the ground, tasting blood and shattered teeth. I could hear shouting, the rookie screaming on the radio, boots running. Pruitt was on top of the rookie, going for his keys. If an inmate gets your keys, you've lost the facility. I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't work. The only thing I could feel was a blinding, white-hot pain. I remember thinking with a weird sense of calm, this is it. This is how I die. Other officers arrived. They pulled Pruitt off and subdued him. I heard the scuffle, the grunts, the thud of the taser, but it all sounded far away. I spent weeks in the hospital. The doctor said his kick had caused a severe concussion and that the impact with the wall nearly separated my skull from my spine. They used words like cervical fracture and told me I was lucky to be alive, lucky not to be paralyzed. You hear stories all the time. Just about every officer sees a coworker get seriously injured. A lot of them have been on the receiving end themselves. That day it was my turn. The physical recovery was agonizing, but the psychological damage was worse. I had nightmares. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, convinced an inmate was in my room. I was jumpy, irritable. I was showing all the classic signs of PTSD. Studies show that up to 34% of corrections officers have it, a rate as high or higher than combat vets. We're walking around with invisible wounds from a war nobody sees. When I finally went back to work, I was different. The fear was always there, a cold knot in my stomach. Every inmate was Pruitt. The us versus them mentality was no longer a choice, it was my reality. The job had broken me physically, but worse, it had broken my nerve. Everyone thinks the worst thing in a prison is the noise. The riots, the screams, the chaos. I lived through the '08 riot in D Block. It was terrifying. It started in the mess hall because they ran out of pork chops. That's all it took. Within minutes, it was a full-blown uprising. Inmates took the block, took 3 officers hostage. They built barricades, armed themselves. We lost control for 18 hours. The noise was apocalyptic. A constant, deafening roar of rage. When the tactical team finally went in with tear gas, it was a battle. But that noise, that symphony of violence, that wasn't the horror. The true horror was the deafening silence that came after. After the block was secured, a special team had to go in for cleanup. That night, it was me and 3 other guys. We walked into D Block and it was like another planet. The air was thick with tear gas and burnt plastic. Emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows. Everything was broken. The floor was a carpet of debris. And everywhere there was that eerie, unnatural quiet. The only sound was the crunch of our boots on broken glass and the drip, drip, drip of a busted fire sprinkler. Our job was to go cell by cell, account for everyone and assess the damage. But really our job was to bear witness. We peered through the windows of the cell doors. The inmates weren't a roaring mob anymore. They were just defeated men. Some curled up on their bunks, some sitting on the floor with their heads in their hands. Some just stared back with empty, hollow eyes. The rage was gone, replaced by a soul-crushing despair. In that silence, you could feel the true weight of the place. In the noise, there's adrenaline, a mission. In the silence, there's only the aftermath. The cold reality of what these men's lives really were. We had to clean up the blood in the day room. We used squeegees and buckets of disinfectant, the water turning reddish-brown. I remember looking at my partner, Barnes, a tough ex-Marine. His face was gray. We didn't speak. What was there to say? This is the part of the job nobody sees. The quiet horror. The slow drip of trauma they call corrections fatigue. We finished as the sun was coming up. We had spent the night in the belly of the beast, and the silence had marked us. That silence is the truth of prison. It's the sound of hopelessness. It's the sound of wasted lives, both inmate and officer. Nothing has ever scared me as much as the deafening silence that follows the storm. The violence, you learn to put it in a box. But there's a quieter horror that gets under your skin. It's the horror of watching people die. Not in a fight, but slowly, quietly, stripped of all dignity. Jails and prisons have become the country's default mental health institutions and nursing homes. We're guards, not nurses or social workers, but we're the ones on the front lines. The death that broke me was a man named Henry. He was in his late 60s, doing life for a murder he'd committed 40 years ago. He was an institution. Then he got cancer. He got too weak to leave his cell in the infirmary block, and part of my rotation put me there. I was watching a man die in slow motion in a tiny concrete box. His cell smelled of sickness. He was just a skeleton. His breath was a shallow, wet rattle. Sometimes he was lucid and he'd tell me stories about the prison in the 70s. He wasn't a monster, just a tired old man full of regrets. Other times he was delirious, calling out for his mother. I would stand at his cell door, listening, feeling completely useless. My job was just to make sure he died in his designated spot. The night he died, I was on shift. I did my 3 a.m. round and looked in his cell. He was lying on his side, eyes open but not seeing anything. The rattle in his chest had stopped. The silence in that cell was different. It wasn't menacing. It was absolute. I called the supervisor. The doctor pronounced him dead at 3:17. My job was to stand there while they put Henry's frail body into a black bag, then help carry him out. He weighed almost nothing. As we carried him down the corridor, I looked back at the empty cell. It was just a concrete tomb. I had to fill out the paperwork. Inmate deceased, natural causes. It felt like signing away a piece of my own humanity. After that, I started to see him everywhere. A flicker of movement at the end of a dark hall. I knew it wasn't real. It was the exhaustion, the stress. Watching Henry die, I saw the profound, pointless cruelty of it all. To die like that, alone in a box, a number on a report. Nobody deserves that. It's not the horror of violence. It's the horror of indifference. And in some ways, that's worse. That there's a saying on the job. Everyone has a breaking point. For some, it's one big thing. For me, it was a slow burn. The assault left me with chronic pain and fear. The riot showed me how futile it all was. Henry's death showed me the hollowness of the system. I was burned out. I was a walking statistic, suffering from depression and PTSD like so many officers. I became a person I didn't recognize. I was angry all the time. I'd snap at my wife, my kids. The job had poisoned me. The final straw was small. It happened during family visitation day. An inmate I knew, Jackson, was there with his 6-year-old daughter. She was sitting on his lap and he was reading her a story. And for that moment, he wasn't inmate number 73406. He was just Dad. His face, usually a hard mask, was soft. He was smiling. A real smile. And I hated him for it. A wave of pure loathing washed over me. I looked at this felon, this man who had hurt people, having this perfect moment I felt I couldn't have with my own kids anymore. I was too angry, too distant. And all I could think was, you don't deserve this. My hand went to my radio. I was searching for any tiny reason to end that visit, to send him back to his cell and wipe that smile off his face. And then I saw it. Jackson's daughter looked up from the book and her eyes met mine. And in her eyes, I saw my own daughter. It was like being hit with ice water. What was I doing? Who had I become? I was jealous of a convict. I was about to punish a man for a moment of happiness. In that moment, I was the monster. The prison hadn't just trapped them, it had trapped me too. It had remade me in its own image, cold, punitive, and graceless. I walked into the staff bathroom and looked in the mirror. I didn't know the man looking back. This was what the old captain warned us about. I finished my shift in a daze. I walked out of those gates for the last time and didn't look back. I drove to a bridge and just sat there for hours. I thought about the suicide rate for correctional officers, how it's so much higher than for almost anyone else. I finally understood. It's not about wanting to die. It's about wanting the noise in your head to stop. I called in the next day and resigned. That it's been 5 years. I don't wear the uniform, but the prison is still with me. It lives in the tremor in my hands, in the way I still scan every room, in the nightmares that still come. I'm in therapy trying to learn how to be a husband and a father again. The average life expectancy for a correctional officer is 59 years old. For everyone else, it's 75. We trade 16 years of our lives for the job. We die sooner, our marriages fail, we suffer from PTSD and depression at rates that should be a national scandal. I wanted to tell this story not for pity, but for understanding. When you hear about prison, you think of the inmates. You rarely think about the men and women locked in there with them. I've seen horrible things. I've seen violence that would make your stomach turn. But the most horrible thing I've ever seen is what the job does to good people. It takes them and grinds them down until there's nothing left but anger and fear. It turns them into ghosts long before they're dead. I escaped. I'm one of the lucky ones. But I left a part of myself inside those walls, a part that will forever be walking a silent tear, listening to the ghosts in the concrete. And I'll carry that silence with me for the rest of my life. Thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, please consider liking and subscribing. The more we talk about these things, the more we can hope for change. Not just for the people we lock up, but for the people we ask to guard them. Stay safe.